Hello, everyone. We are here at the Lunch and Learn for the Sustainable Energy Equity and Knowledge Sharing Project. I think we're going to wait just another minute to get started. I know that yesterday it took people a few minutes to get into sessions. The transition time was just was something we want to accommodate today. So how is everyone? How's the morning been so far?
Good. I attended the physics breakout, which is actually with a few friends of mine. I'm not in that field, and so I always enjoy learning from them. And it was actually a really nice breakout and a lot of good questions and interaction. So it's a good morning so far.
Good. Okay, let's get ourselves started then here. Thanks again for joining us at the EEK Project breakout. We're going to be talking today about accelerating societal energy transitions for sustainability and resilience by linking faith and science, so working in partnership between the scientific and faith communities. EEK is a project that we started at Arizona State University, and we have several of our students and partners here on our panel today, and we'll introduce them in a few minutes. Now, one of the things I want to draw your attention to right away is that we have a public-facing project website. The URL is right there at the top. And it has a lot of information in there, and it explains the context and who we are and who our partners are, and some of the things that you can do to connect with us and get help from us, actually. So why are we, what is our purpose? Well, we come out of some interdisciplinary work and work with our community partners around accelerating the transition in society to sustainable, renewable, resilient energy systems. And with that, building sustainable, resilient climate futures and thriving communities. And we're doing this by focusing on social innovation, linking up social assets and partnerships. And we are, by design, a participatory action research project. When we work with community members, they are partners. They're not necessarily the objects of our research, and we experiment together. So we catalyze the social values into these transitions. We try to really look for and help to empower and strengthen social networks and social cohesion. We focus a lot on linking values with practical action. We work a lot on leveraging our resources and our strengths across sectors and across partnerships. And we take very seriously the mutual learning opportunity that's offered to students and community members and to faculty. And one of the things that we really try to work on is being able to focus on what we're trying to do to make a difference and how to help people measure their individual and collective impact. We often get asked why faith communities, why are we working with faith communities? And one reason is that it's a huge sector and it's largely regarded as underserved by the clean energy market, and it falls through the cracks of a lot of policy programs and incentives. So it's a very, very large sector. There are more than 400,000 houses of worship, people that are related to those faith communities, affiliated with them, part of congregations or informally associated with them, are a majority of the country. There are 328 million people in the US. So 250 million people is a lot of them. They are already organized in large cohesive social networks with a lot of social assets and values and really important things to bring to the table that aren't always recognized. Very well organized, cover the entire country, critical and influential in their communities, and very, very mobilized and motivated around climate and energy issues. But as you can see in this box at the bottom, a very small percentage are at the moment effectively monitoring energy usage or successfully getting involved in solar, which many of them want to do. And why universities and faith communities? Well, because we're organized in sort of the same way. We're nationwide. There are more than 5,000 universities, 19 million college students, and we map onto each other really well. And we've found that there's a strong basis for that kind of mutual learning that I was talking about. At our university, we try to link real world impacts in education with any research that we do, and particularly in this project. So we found that a lot of our students are suffering from climate anxiety, really wanting to make a difference, really wanting to have some sort of practical impact on the future that they would like to create. And that's one of the things that we factor into this project. So in addition to working for the project itself, we look for opportunities to leverage our education across class projects, internships, service learning, volunteer opportunities, and development of marketable skills. So when students leave, they sometimes have an easier time finding jobs because of the work that they've done with us. Now, one of the things that we bring as a university is that we have students and faculty and community partners working with us on these issues from a whole bunch of different perspectives: the psychology, the culture, the engineering, the economics, just looking at the impact of events. A whole bunch of different sort of elements come into play. So we have a really good community for being able to approach these issues from a whole bunch of different perspectives. And so what we try to do is build capacity. And one of the things that we have found, which is going to affect the way our conversation here today goes, is that no matter what people are trying to do, no matter what kind of difference they're trying to make, whether it's increasing their impact on social justice or service in their communities, lowering their energy bills, reducing their climate impact, increasing their sustainability efforts in their own congregations, we find that it all comes down to understanding kind of a progression of capacity building. I sometimes refer to CEEK as a syllabus for society. And we found that energy assessments, knowing your starting point, your energy usage, your climate impact, is a really, really important place for everybody to start. So whether you're trying to just figure out what your goals are in your congregation, trying to figure out whether you can go solar, trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that as you offer your faith community facilities to provide cooling centers or homeless shelters or other things that are of importance to the broader community, and sometimes that impacts energy bills, or sometimes you want to do that in a way that becomes a sort of a kind of role model, the way to kind of do resilience in a renewable and sustainable way. No matter what you're trying to do, it starts with doing these baseline assessments and then engaging in a process of discovery and imagination, experimentation, planning, figuring out your actions, understanding, how to do them, try to accomplish them, and then measuring and evaluating impacts, and then refining as you go. So our partnership model, I've referred to it a few times, it's actually pretty critical. And here is a list of just some of the different organizations that we're working with. Two of our partners are here on this call today, Jerry Lawson and Ryan Hanning. And we're going to want to talk about the some specific things that we've been working on with the two of them. Jerry's going to start, he's going to speak for a few minutes after me. One of the most important practical partnerships that we've developed through this project is with the Energy Star program at EPA. So EPA has had for several decades, has had programs that focus on energy usage and energy efficiency in every sector of the economy. And they actually have a program for congregations, and Jerry Lawson is the national manager of that program. In our project, one of the things that we've developed is a way for students in teams to work with congregations individually or as groups to help them get their baseline assessments using EPA tools. And we have 3 of our students that work on that team on the call today, and we'll hear from them in a little bit as well. So I just want to leave this up here. Feel free to reach out to us at any time through our website, or go ahead and save my email address. Over here to the left is a picture of our actual students taken at a Zoom meeting that we had a few weeks ago. And just want to let you know that we're excited to work with anyone who is interested in working with us. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen sharing, and I would like to turn it over to Jerry Lawson.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited and believe in our partnership with CEEK. I guess one nice thing, I'm an ASU alum, so that was a good fit, but that really was sort of an accident with all of this. What Elisa and Jason and Ryan and all the student team have been working on is learning our portfolio manager tool. Portfolio Manager is a free online bit of software. It's being used by more than 300,000 commercial buildings, Fortune 500, schools, hospitals, retail, and a lot of houses of worship, about 2,000 worship facilities. And that kind of tells the story. 2,000 users of Portfolio Manager out of maybe 400 and 410,000 houses of worship. We've got a long way to go. We don't have the staff to do this. What we specialize in is developing the tools like Portfolio Manager, and then the training. We have a wonderful training center and a very strong help desk, and then the technical support is there as well. So my team and I are ready to work with students whenever they would like to through SEEK. SEEK has really developed its own strong capacity, but we're there too. The student volunteers can be so important because in many congregations, the volunteers look a lot like me. They're older people that maybe don't jump on new software as quickly or are as comfortable with the new software as a student may be. Also, at the congregations, there's a turnover. So it's hard, for the facility manager or business administrator maybe to take this on. So the idea from SEEK to get students involved, and if we can do this across the country, this could be a game changer. Because as Elisa said, the houses of worship, the congregations are the hub of the community. Whatever the denomination, you have homeowners, tenants, educators, politicians, business owners, homeless folks. It's a cross-section, no matter the denomination. So it works in a lot of directions in the local community. Portfolio Manager is particularly powerful because it will calculate the greenhouse gas emissions of the individual house of worship based on its zip code and its energy use, interacting with the emissions factor, or the kilowatt, or the pollution per kilowatt hour of the electric utility serving the house of worship. The other thing that the zip code will do is factor out extreme weather, and extreme weather can really send a wrong signal. You could think that your building is more efficient or less efficient because of the weather impacts. And the Portfolio Manager tool behind the scenes will calculate based on 30 years of U.S. Weather Service data, and then it will look at the anomalies or the extreme weather in a 12-month, most recent 12-month period, and factor that out. So you're really seeing the efficiency of the house of worship as a building. In this tool, we're looking for all the energy use, the hours of operation, square footage, key equipment. If you're interested, you can also track water use and solid waste and recycling. Those are add-ons that are not required, but we encourage that. One of the other great aspects of Portfolio Manager is when you have your account, you can aggregate data with other accounts. That is, an entire denomination, a ministerial alliance, a city group, any number of Portfolio Manager accounts can choose to aggregate data, and they can do it at very granular levels. There are standard reports built into the tool, but you can also develop custom reports. So, if you want to know how much pollution is being prevented in Minnesota or Phoenix, you can figure that out based on the number of participating accounts. You can give different levels of access, of just read-only or sharing or co-managing. So it's a very flexible tool. And there are businesses out there built around Portfolio Manager. There are service and product providers, partners in Energy Star that do this as a for-fee service. So it's really a great tool to learn and could be, really good on your resume. Mm-hmm. Like most commercial buildings, and for general purposes, a worship facility is a commercial building in that it's not residential or industrial. Same as these other sectors, there's about a 30% average waste of energy. Energy that's paid for is being wasted at a level of about 30%. There's a lot can be done about this. We have some resources online. There's the action workbook for houses of worship, for congregations. It's about 80 pages of how-to, starting with no-cost and low-cost activities. There's another great tool at our website you can download. It's the Healthy Houses of Worship Guide. And this is from information across EPA of various programs, asthma, all types of problems that can occur with pollution in not only an urban setting, but within any building that may have a health problem. We also have something we call treasure maps. They're a very brief version of the action workbook. They're a series of bullets and links and tips and ideas that you can download, and it's about 7 pages or so for a house of worship. Depending on the organization, for a denomination or an interfaith group, city, we can co-brand the cover, the inside cover, meaning you can choose local images or organizational images instead of the standard cover. We'll open the inside cover to your organizational information, and then maybe your CEO or executive officer would like to do a full-page letter. And we can customize beyond that as well, depending on maybe local utility programs or municipal programs or specific initiatives of a given organization.
Can we stop there for 1 second, Jerry?
Pardon?
Can we pause there for 1 moment?
Yes.
One thing I want to mention that some of the resources that Jerry just referred to were uploaded with this session, so you can find them through Whova. And also, if you go to our website, the SEEK website, in the fall we had our annual workshop, and we did a whole session on Portfolio Manager and how to use it. So if you're interested in more details about that, you can go to our webpage and you can find that recorded in our archive there. And Jerry, can I pass the torch over to Ryan?
Yes.
So one of the things that really attracted us to Portfolio Manager, besides all the amazing resources and the history that goes with it, and Jerry, is the fact that all of the data for all the congregations and anybody else that uses Portfolio Manager are all loaded up into one large database, which makes it possible to measure the impact that people are having collectively, which is sometimes a very difficult thing to do. And this is an issue that Ryan and I have been talking about since the inception of the SEEK project, the importance of building community cohesion and resilience through partnerships and working together. And I wonder if he could speak to some of those issues and talk about how that, in fact, helps to leverage some of the values that faith communities have anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Elisa. As you mentioned, I mean, our interest and my interest, personally, has been from my background as a theologian, right? And looking at these over 270 million individuals who identify as part of the same faith tradition, and then all the other individuals that would also identify as having some ethical perspective on care for the environment. And so if there's all these people that have within their own tradition a desire to be better stewards, how do we mobilize that? And how do we use data then to really understand how houses of congregation can both sort of themselves, be a better steward of energy, free up some of their resources, right, to pour back into ministry and the service of others. And so we've been really, trying to sort of learn and understand using the benchmarking tool to see how houses of worship, over 410,000 different houses of worship, not to include all the hospitals and schools and all the other networks infused with that, all that have this tradition of saying, hey, look, we want to care for the environment. And then utilizing that network and leveraging out from there for their own personal use as well. And so I think a lot of my interest with SEEK has been understanding how these social networks, one, how you animate and encourage them using this data, like from things like benchmarking through Portfolio Manager. And so far with the networks that I work with, it's been really positive to see how they take ownership then of the data and being a better steward of the electric usage, reinvesting some of their savings back towards ministry, and then also in turn mobilizing their own parishioners and their own members of their congregation to be better stewards as well. So it's really amazing to watch how many points of intersection there are. And it really does start in many ways with just getting the data about how are we using the energy in our houses of worship, and how can we encourage better use of it.
Mhm. Yeah, I neglected to mention that Ryan comes with several hats that he wears. So when we first met him, he was with the University of Mary, which he still is, but he also was with the San Juan Diego Institute, and he is also an independent scholar, theologian, and homesteader. So he comes at this from pretty much every angle, from the personal to the professional. And in our fall workshop, he led a session, moderated a session on cultivating community resilience, not just using benchmarking, but relying on some of the underlying tenets and practices that go along with spiritual traditions, and which many of which have actually folded over into secular forms as well. And so we're looking at those interactions at the same time. So during the pandemic, just as a small example, we have found that although we don't have a control, we don't know what it would have been like if we hadn't done this during the pandemic, but being able to figure out how to continue our project and work together in partnerships, even in a virtual form, has been a real benefit, not only because it helps continue the work, but it helps us maintain connections with each other and with other people in a meaningful way, which has been an okay thing during the last 10, 11 months. And not to lead the witnesses, but we have some students that have been working with us for all that time, and some beyond that on the call as well. And I'd like to ask them to just make some comments about how they came into the project. I mean, some of them found us because they were involved with a faith community and discovered the project that way. Others have been involved in renewable energy transitions questions for a long time and are doing their own research on that, and came to us that way. And if you could just kind of take turns to just talk a little bit about what program you're in and some of your experiences or observations working with faith communities through SEEK, that would be really helpful. Jason, you want to start? Jason's been working with me off and on for about 2 years, I think.
Yeah, sure. So I I've been working with Elisa for 2 years on this project. We've been working for closer to 10 years in academia at ASU, where I've been a graduate student and worker there. I actually started out in industry in the private sector and worked for about 15, 20 years before coming back to school and getting my master's in science technology policy and continuing on with a PhD where I'm at now, just about to finish up in the human and social dimensions of science and technology, which is in the School for the Future of Innovation Society. And so for me, this is an interesting project for lots of reasons. The one thing that stands out is that having worked in industry for so long and the commercial side of things, you'll find people of varying skills and varying motivations for doing their job, whatever that may be. And there may or may not, very often is not a higher cause. Whereas here, folks still have varying degrees of capability doing the thing when it comes to energy management and looking at sustainability issues, and everyone's learning. So we're all on the same page there. And but the key is, it's interesting, is how folks are doing it for different reasons. So they're doing sustainable actions very often for maybe care for creation or for better stewardship of the planet or their local community for that matter. And those, I think, are usually higher primary motivations for them. And if they can keep it economically neutral, great. If we can make some more money, then even better, which they can then reinvest back into their mission. But the fact that there's this sort of higher cause, this purpose, is really something that I found valuable and interesting, that is fulfilling, that is not always there in the private sector, which is just about money for the most part, or doing whatever the government says because they have to. So it's a very different perspective.
Mm. Leah, did you want to have something to say about that? Do you have any comments about that? And explain where you're coming from as well, your program and where you are in your studies.
So I'm a senior this year in an interdisciplinary program with sustainability and communications as my disciplines. And I came to know about the program through Ben Sanders, which is a friend of, I think, Elisa. And he just is passionate about all the energy stewardship happening in Christian communities. And So I knew him from being a Christian and from the spiritual and faith background that I have with him. And then he wanted to help me get real world experience with my major and with my degree plan. So he connected me and I got to start collaborating like last, spring of 2020, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it was right before the pandemic hit, right?
It's like
Yeah.
January, so I guess like winter, but it's been really fun to see what can happen when people collaborate together. And that's been my biggest takeaway from the whole project. I've gotten to do like an internship for my program with the project, which was great, where I got to write a little report and just basically do what I was already doing with them and then have it work for my school and my credits. And yeah, the biggest takeaway that I have is just seeing what happens when people bond together and commit to a team and what can be achieved through that collaboration.
Jairo, did you want to join in here? We've been having some technical difficulties already this morning. So we have a third student, Jairo Ramirez Torres, who may or may not be able to join us all the way. He's an electrical engineering undergrad, and he had been involved in some humanitarian engineering projects before. I think he might still be involved in them, but he did that before he came to us, and had been involved in some solar projects in the community. And so he brings a really interesting and different skill set. So we have a student who specializes in the intersection of society and technology. We have a student who specializes in ideas about sustainability, but is really interested in communication issues and education issues. And then we have a student who is very well versed in the engineering aspects of the stuff that we're working on, but is also interested in the overlaps with community. So when you add, and we have other students working with us as well. We have some students from the University of Chicago working with us this semester. We have a recent ASU graduate who continues to work with us. She's a sustainability intern at a local congregation in Tempe. We have one of our other PhD students from ASU who is finishing her dissertation on community solar, and she's working with us this semester as well. So we can bring a lot of different perspectives, and then we try really hard to find meaningful things that students can do that advance, that are both in their own area of interest and specialization, and help advance what we're trying to do as well as advance what they're trying to do. So Leah, for instance, has been learning how to build websites. So we had another student last year who built the website I showed you, and Leah's been working with that student to keep it up to date and to do fancier things than I know how to do. Jason has been leading our benchmarking team. So he's become quite a specialist in portfolio manager and knowing the ins and outs and dealing with the data, also in ways that exceed what I would be able to do. And that's part of the interesting thing about this project, that everybody kind of contributes sort of in that stone soup model. Everybody puts in what they have, and nobody really can duplicate anybody else, which is kind of how you know that you're coming up with something new and different. That we all bring, our own contributions to the project, and it's also why the multi-sectoral partnership model is so important to us, because we work with city leaders, we work with federal agencies, we work with nonprofits, we work with private sector solar installers, we work with utilities. We work with other universities. We really do have quite a mix of things going on, and it makes for a really fruitful and productive, if sometimes overwhelmingly busy, sort of way forward. And I think we have been able to demonstrate to ourselves that there really are some things that come out of this sort of collaboration that wouldn't have happened without it, which is why we continue in this way. For the people that are on the call who are joining us as participants, do you have any questions or comments of your own that you'd like to bring into the conversation? Ryan, do you have any thoughts after listening to the students? Any responses? You're a fellow teacher.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of if you're going to be honest about trying to figure out how social networks can actually be animated, then it's important to have people who are coming to the project who themselves can share what excites them, what they're interested in from their different backgrounds as well. And I think that type of approach to collaboration is ensured when you have students involved, which I think is really cool. So even my own institute, San Juan Diego Institute, we've committed some funds to help with interns because we see such a value in having students in at the ground level, not only for what they provide in the terms of questions they ask, but then also sort of hooking them early in the type of research that moves towards asking these questions, of engagement moving forward in the future. So, yeah, I think one of the designs of Seek that I'm probably most excited about is having all the student involvement, because it helps us in some ways ask questions we might not have thought of, and also helps get us access to places we might not have access to. I mean, I can tell you, working with municipalities and large, complicated congregations, sometimes a student intern calling up with some really interesting questions and a desire opens up doors that as a researcher, I might not have access to.
That is really true. Very, very few people can resist a student. It is true.
Yeah, and then I think too, just in terms of if there's going to be, if the end goal is to increase congregations' ability to really animate within their own tradition of stewardship to effectuate change and to encourage their congregants to do the same, it's helpful to have a wide range of people working on the project that can represent those specific interests and positions, and even just some of the knowledge of the way churches work, municipalities work. And so I think by not having sort of a top-down approach and having some students involved, it really helps with that as well.
Yeah, so it's not really represented here, but because it would be broader, but we focused on a number of things. One is that we don't, what we refer to as we don't have any litmus tests. So there are no specific faith traditions or more general spiritual traditions that we won't work with. We don't ask people to, be a green congregation. We don't differentiate between people that are interested in climate action versus people that are trying to save money on their energy bill. We do not make those distinctions, and we really encourage people who are working with us to operate in that same sort of very inclusive, sort of good faith culture. Because if we're going to be dealing with these large scale transitions, remember, that's the bottom line experiment that we're running. I mean, it's a big collaborative social experiment to see how effectively and how innovatively and how quickly we can move toward more sustainable and resilient energy systems which support everything else in society, right? So that's kind of the bottom line, sort of experiment that we are running. And so we look at all faith traditions. We work with interfaith organizations. They're not only Christian churches or Christian traditions. And one of our other close partners is the Parliament of the World's Religions, which has connected us globally with a wide variety, very diverse traditions. In the US, we've been working not just in Phoenix, we have connections with Chicago, LA. We're having lots of discussions with the Archdiocese of Washington, DC, and some other places. And one of the things that you start to see pretty quickly is that there's a lot of diversity within the faith community, and all kinds of diversity, socioeconomic, ethnic, all spiritual, all kinds of things. And that's a really important thing for us. That's a really important sort of, it's a really important fact about what collaborative and all hands on deck work means. And one of the people that's really helped us understand that is Jerry. Jerry has such a depth of relationships with the broadest and most inclusive, most diverse networks of congregations and faith communities that he's built up over decades. And he knows everybody, and everybody respects him. And he's been just enormously and graciously helpful in helping us learn about this sector and who's in it. Jerry, do you have comments about that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of there's multiple motivations for all of us here. One coming from EPA, and even with a new administration that understands climate change is a terrible threat, and that believes in science, and I think will better resource all of this effort, we still won't be able to reach these 400,000 congregations. And it was before we knew we would have a supportive administration, the SEEK team has been tremendously supportive and encouraging to us at EPA, who didn't know where we were going to be this time of year. A driver is we're not going to achieve our decarbonization goals at EPA without better serving, to put it in religious language, the least among us. It's the least among us, minority, low income, lower education, who are suffering the impacts of pollution more than anyone else. They have, they're paying a higher percentage of their income for energy, and they're suffering from the pollution from that energy. So there's a very negative circle here. So there is, it's so important to engage the moral strength of the faith community along with the science and economics of EPA and our business partners. We have to get into, we have a great track record with the Fortune 500 and the big school districts and the cities and the counties, all the big property owners. That's about half the issue. The other half is grade B and C, retail space, commercial space, strip centers, the homes of people who are not well insulated, who are vulnerable to weather. So this is really a question that is both moral and practical. It's ultimately moral. I mean, how are we going to survive here? But there is the shorter term environmental justice issue of climate. And who's suffering first and most from climate? We know it's the millions, the billions at the water's edge, and the people so vulnerable to extreme weather, and who can't pay to be comfortable and to be safe even, who have respiratory problems. So this is very interrelated to the ministries of all of our faith partners and communities, in which every faith tradition, once you really interpret it in modern terms, addresses sustainability. They've always spoken to human health and not wasting and to sharing. So this all works together beautifully, and it's. I just want to stress how important it is to have the students involved in this, because they're going to take this forward into their careers. And I hope that after they've been in their careers 30 years like I have, they won't be looking back at a lot of things that should have happened that didn't happen. So thank you.
I see that Rachel has unmuted herself, and I think she has now gone. Okay. I wanted to comment on that briefly. One of the things that you mentioned there, Jerry, is a real strength and an area of expertise, I will say, that the faith community brings to the collaborations that we're talking about. A lot of the accelerating energy transitions work that most of us do focus on the technology and the policy and the law and markets. You know, it focuses on the things. It focuses on behaviors. It doesn't always focus on the people, kind of in their wholeness. And one of the things that we have observed that faith communities do instinctively, but also intentionally, is focus on people. As you're saying, Jerry, focus on their lived experience, focus on who they are as a whole, focus on what really motivates them, focus on what's really meaningful, and who you need to include and why, and the moral imperatives and all of that, and have a way of being able to organize that work and think about that work in a coherent way, and then link it up with the kinds of things that are not always considered in this sector. So science and technology fields, which energy often is, and so is climate, often understands people as victims, but doesn't always understand people, or people that are negatively affected by things, or but doesn't necessarily see human beings as being partners all the time. It's complicated. When there are a lot of people, it's complicated. And one of the things that faith traditions really do is include a lot of people who can work together on areas of common concern and shared values. Ryan, I see you nodding.
Oh, yeah, I just agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think this is one of the strengths that hasn't been relied on, that's sort of built into a lot of congregations. And I think the movement from having a spiritual tradition that encourages stewardship, but then moving that towards the practical ways that you actually do that, both as a congregation and a personal level, I think is really key. So I think you're right. I mean, that's one of the great strengths of engaging in this type of work.
I want to follow up on something that Ryan had talked about earlier and bringing students on board and how valuable that is. And one of the things that people view us as are guileless. So we are kind of coming at this from a more innocent point of view, as it were. Whereas if we were coming at this from a corporate point of view, which is how people most often engage with sustainability technology and issues. So they feel like they're trying to sell them something. And we're not trying to sell them anything per se. So we're coming at this from more as an honest broker, which is why it's valuable to have this university and faith, I think, combination, because those two things put together, along with the students being part of all this, people tend to have a little bit more trust. They tend to give us a little bit more leeway as we ask these kind of weird questions that may not get asked in the normal sort of scripting that you'll see from a corporate point of view, where they are actually trying to sell people something. Whereas we're just trying to engage with people. We're trying to partner with people and work through this together. And through that process, we can discover the things that they can do. So that's another valuable part, I think, of this whole university and faith tradition, faith sector being put together.
Yeah, thank you for commenting on that. The honest broker aspect has actually been a really important part of this project. We wouldn't have started it if we weren't having faith sector partners come to us and say, can you help us provide technical assistance as a university, because we know that you aren't trying to sell us something, because we know that we can trust you, because we know that you're an honest broker, and trying to figure out how to bring the best of what we can offer as a university, not beyond what we can offer, but really figure out what our expertise is, what our strengths are in this, to the partnership, has been and continues to be, I think, an ongoing part of the experiment. And I think that the recognizing how important one-on-one interaction is for helping people in the community learn certain things, and how that can be of mutual benefit to students and to us as faculty, has been one of the more eye-opening things about this. So people came to us looking for technical assistance, and it turns out that we're all learning a lot from each other as we go along. So Jairo is with us now. So I'd like to turn the microphone over to you. Do you have, I don't know how much you were able to hear. It seemed like you were possibly having some technical difficulties there.
No, sorry. Yeah, I had a problem at my house. I had to make sure everything was all right, but everything's good. But so I wasn't in the meeting. I wasn't here at all.
Right, that's what I thought. So what people were talking about, we'll just put you on the spot a little bit, but the pressure is very low. But I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to say some things. So we've been talking about all kinds of aspects of the project and collaborations and what people have been learning working with faith communities in this area. Do you want to just talk a little bit about where you are in your studies and some of the things that you've observed or that you found interesting or surprising in your work with SEEK and with the congregations? And also, now nobody mentioned, but we should mention that people seeing what we're doing with faith communities, other kind of underserved or under-resourced sectors are reaching out to us as well. So we're working with a small city in Arizona right now, helping them do the same benchmarking. because it turns out they have some of the same value spaces and some of the same lack of staffing, or just not altogether clear on how to use this portfolio manager tool when they look it up online. And so our students are actually teaching them how to use it. And Hyro is one of them.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry about that, but yeah, but I'm
That's
Hyro,
okay.
and I'm doing electrical engineering. So apart from that, then yeah, I'm also part of EEK since May last year. And I think some of the things that, so I came in because of another teacher in that we were talking about similar aspects about sustainability. So I came in through that aspect of the project, which interested me a lot. And in terms of things that have surprised me, definitely understanding the effect that just looking at portfolio manager has for people is pretty interesting. Even the simple act of putting the bills in there and seeing a graph that they had not seen before, and seeing how their energy consumption looks like in numbers is pretty interesting, and people usually have some sort of reaction, whether it be positive or negative, but they usually do have some sort of reaction. And then also the other aspect was that, yeah, I think it before before the project, I had not really understood the importance of it in terms of benchmarking and understanding your energy usage and things like that. I was all focused in all the technical solar cells and all crazy stuff, and hadn't thought about the smaller things like this that really do make differences. So I think that was important as well. And then what I mostly do, so I've learned a lot of portfolio manager, and that's what I've been mostly doing, and also kind of having conversations with different types of people in different congregations, and then hopefully, yeah, I think this new project with public cities and municipalities is going to be really interesting as well, because it'll bring in another perspective to what we do. But yeah.
I think that we will close the session, and I want to thank everybody for being here. Jerry and Leah and Ryan and Jason and Hyro in particular. Thank you for making time of your day and coming and joining us on a Saturday.